At dinner, my mom said, "It's for those who actually contribute." My sister smirked. "Just be happy we told you it all." I said, "Thanks for the honesty." Then I went home, shut down the payment portal, and blocked every linked device. At 5:17 a.m., my brother texted me, "We can't board. Call the airline." I didn't. The thing about betrayal is that it never explodes like a firework. It creeps in like mold, slow, silent, and just as poisonous. That night I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in my car parked outside the pretentious little bistro. They insisted on the kind with white tablecloths and truffle oil in every dish. Bianchi's. A place they loved, not for the food, but for the illusion. Imported olive oil. A wine list longer than the Constitution. Menu items nobody could pronounce right. But it looked upscale in the background of an Instagram story, and for them that was enough. I showed up on time like I always did. Dressed in a collared shirt, nice jeans. I even ironed my sleeves. For once I thought maybe, just maybe, they wanted a nice family dinner. Some small moment of peace. I was so stupidly hopeful. They were already there, of course. My mom kissed my cheek like she hadn't ignored my last 3 calls. My sister barely looked up from her phone. My brother nodded like we were co-workers, not people who used to build blanket forts together. And my dad, he gave me that tight pinch smile he always used when he was about to say something cruel but hadn't decided when. Dinner started normal enough. Bread basket, wine. My mom complained about TSA, even though she wasn't flying for another 24 hours. My brother cracked a joke about his new personal trainer, something dumb but funny, and for a split second it actually felt like family again. Like maybe we had turned some invisible corner. But then the mood shifted. It's hard to explain unless you have lived it. A coldness that leaks into the space between words. A tension that makes the air feel heavier. I should have seen it. The way they all slowed down their chewing, the way my sister tilted her head just slightly waiting. Like they were bracing for impact, except I was the one getting hit. The pasta had just arrived. I lifted my fork. 1 bite, that's all I got. Then my mom set hers down and said it. Calmly, casually, like she was discussing the weather. "It's for those who actually contribute." Silence. No one looked at me, not even her. She stared at my sister like it was a secret they'd already shared, just finally saying it out loud. My sister smirked. My brother kept scrolling his phone, but I could see the tendons tighten in his neck. My dad dabbed his mouth with a napkin like nothing had happened. And then Emma, my sister, added, "Just be happy we told you it all." Like it was some kind of gift, this premeditated rejection, this careful erasure. It was all rehearsed, polished, served cold like the butter that came with the bread. I said the only thing I could say. "Thanks for the honesty." And I meant it. Not because I appreciated it, but because finally they said what I'd been feeling for years. I wasn't part of this family. I was the wallet. The trip to Europe. That was my idea. I'd wanted to do something special. It had been 10 years since our last trip together. 10 years of birthdays, holidays, missed calls, and awkward family group chats. I thought maybe we could hit reset, make new memories, start over. So I planned it all. The flights, the hotels, day tours in Rome, sunset dinners in Santorini, even the little pocket Wi-Fi routers for convenience. I spent just under 30 grand money I'd saved over 2 years by eating microwave meals and skipping vacations of my own. I never expected a full payback, but I figured unspoken agreement right, we're family. They'd chip in later, or at least show appreciation. Instead, they decided I wasn't driven enough, that I didn't build toward a future, whatever the hell that means. All whispered behind my back, then dropped like a bomb with my penny. I paid the bill. Of course I did. They never even reached for their wallets. I walked out without saying goodbye. The waiter said, "Have a good night," and I didn't answer. I went straight home. No detours. No distractions. Sat down at my laptop and started canceling flights, hotels, car rentals. Everything. It was surprisingly easy. A few clicks, a few phone calls. I recovered about 80% of the cost. So, yeah, I lost $6,000. But I also spared myself the humiliation of spending 10 days overseas with people who didn't even want me there. Then I revoked access. My travel app had been linked to everyone's devices. One by one, I kicked them out. Removed permissions, blocked emails, locked it all down like a fortress. At 3:02 a.m., I closed the laptop. At 5:17, my brother texted me, "We can't board. Call the airline." I stared at it for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Not out of guilt, out of habit. That part of me that had always been trained to fix, to accommodate, to sacrifice. But that part of me was dying, and I was ready to let it rot. I went back to sleep. At 8:10, the phone rang again. I answered. It was my father. He didn't even say hello. Just, "You're out of the apartment. I want you gone by next week." Then he hung up. No warning, no reasoning, no conversation. I sat in my room, the place I'd lived for 2 years, technically theirs, but I paid $1,000 a month in rent. They liked to remind me that was less than market rate, as if that gave them the right to treat me like a 16-year-old, dictating when I could use the AC, who I could have, over what kind of furniture was acceptable. That morning I didn't panic. I didn't beg. I started packing. One sock at a time, one drawer at a time. Every folded t-shirt was a goodbye. Every cardboard box a silent rebellion. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt free. I packed slowly, methodically, like I was memorizing every object I touched. It wasn't about organizing, it was about letting go. The shirt I wore at my last birthday dinner. The mug that said "World's Okayest Brother," a gag gift from Emma that now felt like a punchline. Every drawer I emptied, every hanger I pulled down, it all whispered the same thing. You were never really part of this home. By noon, half the kitchen was in boxes. Around 3, I found a listing online, furnished 1-bedroom, quiet street corner unit with sunlight and, most importantly, no roommates. The guy renting it was relocating to Vancouver and needed someone immediately. I messaged. He called within 10 minutes. After a quick video tour and a Venmo transfer, the place was mine for the next 6 months. No co-signed lease. No dad has to approve. No questions about whether I really needed a second pillow. That night, I slept on a bare mattress under a ceiling that didn't creak with judgment. The air smelled like old Peinect cleaner and stale carpet, but it was mine. The silence was so total it was unnerving at first. No footsteps upstairs. No one asking if I'd remembered to take out the trash. Just the steady hum of the fridge, the occasional barking dog outside, and my own heartbeat slowing for the first time in years. The next morning, I was kneeling on the floor, taping a box shut, when there was a knock at the door. I didn't need to look, I knew. I opened it anyway. There they were, my mom holding a plastic container of Danish pastries, like this was a brunch invite, not a damage control mission. My dad stood behind her, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. I could hear Emma's voice on speakerphone coming from my mom's bag. They came as a unit, as a statement. We've been thinking my mom started voice syrupy sweet. Maybe we were a little hasty. My dad cleared his throat. You were clearly in a bad place emotionally. We're willing to forgive and move past it, if you stop acting irrationally. It took everything in me not to laugh. Irrational. Is that what they called self-respect now? Emma's voice crackled from the speaker. You're blowing this out of proportion. One mistake and you're nuking years of family for drama. That word drama was the final trigger. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just told the truth. Every ugly little truth I'd buried over the years, like landmines, hoping I'd never have to step on them. The loan I took out to cover Dad's back surgery when insurance wouldn't. The plans I canceled because Mom guilt-tripped me about being too distant. The time I paid Emma's rent twice because her roommate supposedly bailed. The birthdays I spent alone because they forgot, or worse, remembered, but didn't care. You don't get to call it drama now, I said. Not when you've made me your emotional and financial punching bag for over a decade. They stood there, pretending to listen. My mom blinked like I was speaking a foreign language. My dad muttered something about how I was rewriting history. Too late. I told them I'd be out in 2 days. No, they didn't need to worry about rent. No, I didn't want their help. No, I wasn't coming to Sunday dinner. And no, I didn't want to hear from any of them. I shut the door. The latch clicked like a gavel. They didn't come back that night, or the next. 2 days later, I moved. The apartment was small, slightly slanted floors, cabinets that didn't quite close. But the windows let in light, and none of the neighbors knew my name, and I could breathe. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't owe them that. For the first time in years, I felt like a person, not a safety net, not a wallet, not a backup plan, just Henry. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The first week in the new place felt surreal. I'd wake up expecting some passive-aggressive group text or a reminder to clean a sink I didn't use. But there was nothing, just silence. And it was the kind of silence I didn't know I needed until I had it. I filled the space slowly. A cheap couch from Facebook Marketplace, a desk under the window where I could write or just stare out at the world, a second-hand espresso machine, not because I needed it, but because I could. Every little choice was mine. every small indulgence. No one asked me why, no one guilt-tripped me for my priorities. Then a week and a half later, I got an email. Subject line, "Please call us. It's urgent." It was from my mom. I deleted it without opening it. An hour later, another came, this time from my dad. Subject, "We need to talk. It's important. Please don't ignore us." I muted the thread, but curiosity lingered. That night, I checked their social media. Emma's Instagram had gone quiet. No gym selfies from my brother. My mom's Facebook hadn't posted a single cat meme in days. For her, that was basically a cry for help. Then came the third email from my brother's account. Subject, "Hey, something happened. Please, just call me." I didn't. I sat with it. Let it marinate. Let that old reflex creep in, the one that made me feel like everything was my responsibility. Like if I ignored them, I was somehow a bad son, a bad brother, a monster. But that feeling passed. I clicked on the email anyway, just out of morbid curiosity. It was vague, like they were afraid to type the full story. But the tone said enough. Something had gone very wrong. 2 days later, I found out what it was. They didn't tell me. My cousin Derek did. Apparently, the airline never refunded the taxes on the non-refundable leg of the trip. The hotel in Rome charged a cancellation fee that had been buried in the fine print. And the travel insurance, they never followed through with the claim, because none of them actually read the policy I bought. Total out-of-pocket loss, almost $8,000. Worse, Dad had put some of it on a credit card that was already maxed out. That triggered a freeze. My sister's tuition reimbursement from work fell through. The trip that never happened still managed to financially wreck them. Karma's timing impeccable, and that's when the begging started. Calls, voicemails, my mom sobbing, my dad muttering about rebuilding trust, Emma saying this had gone too far and we're all suffering now. I listened to all of it and replied to none of it. Then one Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed again. 5 calls in a row. I checked the last voicemail. It was my mom, her voice raw, wet with desperation. "If you don't help us now, you're not our son anymore." I played it twice. Let it echo through the stillness of my new apartment. "You're not our son anymore." It was meant to guilt me, to manipulate, to break me. But it didn't hurt the way they thought it would. I didn't reply to the voicemail. I didn't pace the room or stare at my phone or even feel that familiar punch of guilt in my chest. I just sat there, still, quiet. The words, "You're not our son anymore," didn't shatter me. They landed like a confirmation of something I'd known for years but never dared to say aloud. It was meant as a threat, a final ultimatum, but it felt more like a release. Over the next 2 months, my life settled into something that resembled peace. Not glamorous, not perfect, but real. I bought groceries without a calculator. I went on walks just because. I had coffee with a coworker without anyone texting me asking where I was or when I'd be home. I started feeling human again. Then one afternoon, walking back from the bodega, I froze mid-step. I knew that car. It was my dad's Chevy beat-up forest green, with that dent on the back fender from the time Emma backed into a pole and blamed a stranger. Except it wasn't my dad behind the wheel. Some teenager was driving windows down stereo, blasting something unintelligible. I just stood there on the sidewalk, grocery bag in hand, watching my dad's pride and joy fade into traffic like a ghost. A week later, my cousin Derek sent me a screenshot. Facebook Marketplace. For sale, 2008 Chevy Impala. Good condition, 2,700 or best offer. I stared at it longer than I'd like to admit. That car wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol. Of control, of status, of everything he thought made him a provider. Selling it meant things were worse than they let on. Much worse. Turns out I didn't know the half of it. 3 days later, someone knocked on my door. I peered through the peephole and felt my stomach tighten. Hoodie, sunglasses, backpack slung over one shoulder. For a second, I thought it was a neighbor. It wasn't. It was my brother. No text, no warning. Just standing there like this was a sitcom, and we were about to hug it out during the commercial break. I opened the door, but didn't say anything. He walked right past me, sat on the edge of my couch, and dropped his backpack with a heavy thud. Then he said it. "They need help." I didn't sit. I leaned against the wall and just watched him. Apparently, since the trip imploded, everything else did too. Their savings were gone. Credit cards frozen. Dad's bank was threatening collections. Mom's hours at work got cut after a new supervisor took over. And Emma Goldenchild, Emma was under some kind of HR investigation. Something about a corporate card receipts not matching. He didn't say it outright, but I could tell they were drowning. Then came the ask. He reached into the backpack like he was unveiling a sacred scroll. Inside an envelope, neatly printed bank statements, a drafted loan agreement, bullet points, interest rates, signatures. They were asking me to lend them $10,000. Not give, lend. As if turning it into a business deal would make it easier to stomach. I didn't yell, I didn't scoff. I just walked into the kitchen and got 2 glasses of water, sat one down in front of him, sat with mine. He started filling the silence. They're scared. They didn't mean everything they said. Mom's been crying every night. Dad's not sleeping. I sipped my water. Then I said calmly, clearly no. He blinked, like he hadn't heard me. No, I repeated, I am not helping, not again. He stared at the table, jaw clenched. I could see him calculating whether to guilt me, rage at me, or plead. He settled for something in between. If you don't help them, this could get really bad. I set my glass down. It already has. He stood up slowly, like the air had gotten heavier, mumbled something about figuring it out, and left without another word. That night I got a voicemail. It was my mom. Her voice was shaky, threaded with tears she wanted me to hear. We shouldn't have said that about you not being our son. We were angry, scared. You know we didn't mean it. But I knew they did. Maybe not in the way they intended. Maybe not literally. But emotionally, spiritually, they meant every word. I deleted the message. Then 3 days later, something happened that rattled me to the core. An email from my credit monitoring service, fraud alert, payday loan application detected. Someone had tried to take out a $3,500 loan in my name using my old address, my birthday, my social security number. But it didn't go through because I'd frozen my credit months earlier, right after I moved. At the time, it was just a precaution. Now it felt prophetic. I requested a copy of the application. Everything matched. My name, my info, my old apartment address, the one I lived in when I was still the good son. This wasn't a hacker. It wasn't some random identity thief. This was someone who had lived with me. I didn't confront them. I didn't need a confession. If they were willing to exploit my identity like that, there was no point in salvaging anything. I filed a report, added extra fraud protection, locked down every last financial account, and I did it all in silence. That's what they never understood. Cutting someone off doesn't always come with yelling. Sometimes it's just a locked door. Sometimes it's just nothing. For weeks there were no calls, no emails, nothing. It was almost eerie. I started to believe maybe they'd given up. But then, just when I thought the worst was behind me, when the quiet had become comfortable again, my cousin Lena sent me a screenshot. It was a Facebook post from my mom. Black and white background, dramatic font. No names, but very much about me. Some people pretend to be family until you need them. Some people pretend to love you until you're no longer useful. But that's okay. God sees everything. And just like that, the silence was shattered. There it was, plastered on my screen in grayscale bold type, with passive-aggressive venom only a certain kind of Facebook post can deliver. Some people pretend to be family until you need them. Some people pretend to love you until you're no longer useful. But that's okay. God sees everything. She hadn't tagged me, of course. That would have been too direct. But the comment section was littered with vague sympathy. Praying for you, Marie. Stay strong, girl. Some people forget who raised them. God doesn't miss a thing. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete the screenshot either. Instead, I watched as the ripple spread. The next morning, I woke up to 23 notifications. Facebook Messenger, even 2 voicemails. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral asking me what happened. Why wasn't I talking to my mom? Was I okay? Had I fallen into the wrong crowd? I ignored most of them until my Uncle Jeff called. Not a message, an actual phone call. He's not the sentimental type. Grew up a mechanic, taught himself how to rebuild carburetors before he could shave. But he said one thing I didn't expect. Tell me everything, no filters. So I did. I sat on my rickety $40 kitchen chair, staring at a half-empty coffee mug, and unloaded every dirty secret I'd kept quiet out of fear of looking like a bad son. The Italy trip, the eviction, the loan request, the identity theft, everything. He didn't interrupt once, just listened long and low, then quietly, Jesus, Henry, they didn't tell us any of this. Later that day, Derek messaged me again. Dude, what the hell, Mom's spinning this story like you lost it. Crying on the phone saying you're unstable and she's sparred. Said she might get a restraining order. My stomach dropped. Not because it was true, but because it wasn't, and yet it was already taking root. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She was building a defense against me. I sat there, phone in hand, pulse slow but heavy, like something inside me had gone cold. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about narrative control. If they couldn't guilt me into coming back, they'd isolate me instead. Seed doubt in every shared bloodline. But something happened they didn't plan for. Jeff. That evening he posted a public status. No passive-aggressive quote background. No vague threats. Just a full-tag, bold-faced declaration. It's hard watching people rewrite history to make themselves feel better. Proud of my nephew for finally setting boundaries. Maybe if more of us had, things would be different. Boom. Within hours, the comments on my mom's post started to vanish. The original post gone the next morning. Then came the final blow. A message from her. Short, no apology, no explanation. Hope you're happy. You've turned everyone against us. I stared at it for a while. Then I typed back, you did that all by yourself. Send block. And just like that, the last thread snapped. You'd think that would be the end, right? But if there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's this. When they lose control of you, they try to control the story. 3 days later, I woke up to a fresh wave of notifications. A new post. Same format. Black and white background. Big dramatic letters. He's not mentally well. Please pray for my son. We're heartbroken but doing our best. Some things are beyond our control. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. In case there was any doubt, she commented under her own post with an old photo of me, age 12, braces grinning at a family picnic. Then came the calls. First my grandma, then Aunt Teresa, then a cousin from Nevada I hadn't heard from since 2011. Concern in their voices. Are you okay? Your mom said you're spiraling. Do you need help? One even asked if I'd been using drugs. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. That's when Cheryl reached out. I barely remembered her. She worked with my mom at the public library, said she always thought I was polite, kind, thought I deserved a heads up. Apparently my mom had been crying at work, telling coworkers I'd gone off the deep end, that I'd made threats, that she feared for her safety. Even hinted at filing a restraining order. That stopped me cold. I hadn't done a damn thing. No calls, no messages, not even a voicemail since I left. But there she was, planting seeds of fear and ambiguity, trying to turn silence into menace. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just petty, it was malicious. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. For a while, I did nothing. I didn't post a rebuttal, didn't call anyone, didn't try to clear my name. I just sat with it, the ache, the anger, the growing absurdity of it all. Every fiber in me screamed to fight back. But another part, it whispered, don't give them your energy. So instead I waited. And it worked. At first, the silence was deafening. But then something odd happened. People started reaching out, not with accusations, but with doubt. Real doubt. Hey, your mom said some stuff at church last week. Didn't sound right. Just checking in. Your sister told my wife you were in therapy for rage issues. That true? Uncle Tom said you threatened your mom. But that doesn't sound like you. One by one, the cracks started forming. And that's when I realized something important. I didn't need to scream the truth from rooftops. I just needed to stop shielding them from the consequences of their lies. Because for years, I'd been their buffer, the one who made excuses, patched things up, kept the family ship from sinking. And without me doing that, they were left to navigate their mess alone. By week 3, the narrative had shifted. Uncle Jeff's post had more shares than I expected, and a few brave relatives began to speak up in private. One aunt messaged saying, I always wondered how your mom got that new credit card so fast when she was broke. Now I know. Another cousin admitted she once overheard my sister bragging about tricking Henry into paying her rent. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was just finally free. But freedom, I learned, comes with its own kind of grief. There were nights I lay in my new apartment ceiling fan humming, wondering if I should have handled things differently, if I should have tried one more time, if cutting them off had made me cold or just human. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A letter, not an email, not a text. An actual physical envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a single handwritten note. Please stop. You're ruining everything. No name, but the handwriting was familiar, my sister's. And taped to the bottom, a crumpled copy of my canceled flight confirmation to Rome, the one only she and my mom had access to. It hit me like a punch to the chest. They weren't just angry I walked away. They were terrified. Not of what I'd do, but of what I knew. Because if I ever laid everything bare, every favor, every dollar, every manipulation, they'd lose more than a family member. They'd lose their image, their control. That night I didn't sleep. I paced. I replayed every voicemail, every word, every dinner where I'd swallowed my hurt and smiled anyway. I thought about how many birthdays I paid for, how many times I told myself, it's just how they are. And I realized something. It was never about love. It was about leverage. And now that they'd lost theirs, they were panicking. The next morning I opened my laptop. I started writing, not for revenge, not to expose anyone, but to reclaim the narrative they tried to steal. I documented everything: dates, bank transfers, screenshots, voicemails. I started putting together a private journal, a paper trail. If they ever tried to legally accuse me of something, I'd be ready. But as I typed, something else began to take shape. A question. What if I shared my story not with the family, but with the world? What if there were others like me? Quiet sons, overlooked, daughters, people gaslit into thinking they were the problem when they were just trying to survive. It was tempting, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. So I saved the file, encrypted it, backed it up on a drive. Then I did something small but powerful. I unfollowed them, all of them. No more backdoor Facebook spying. No more checking if my sister posted brunch photos with fake smiles. No more guessing what cryptic Bible verse my mom had shared as a jab. Just silence. Clean. And that weirdly felt like the loudest decision of all. But just when I thought the storm had passed, the doorbell rang. It was 8:07 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole, and there he was. My brother, hood up, same backpack from the airport night, no expression, just standing there. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He knocked again, 3 times, slow, deliberate. Then from the hallway I heard him say, "Henry, I need to tell you something. It's about Dad." My heart stopped. He sounded different, not smug, not rehearsed, just scared. I didn't open the door right away. Something about the way he said it, "It's about Dad," made my stomach twist. His voice wasn't smug or defensive like before. It was low, brittle, like something was about to crack. I stood behind the door, hand resting on the knob. Then I asked, "Is he okay?" Silence. Then a sigh. "No, not really." That was enough. I unlocked the door and stepped aside. My brother walked in slowly, shoulders hunched, like the air was heavier than usual. He didn't take off his hoodie, didn't sit down, just stood near the entryway, fidgeting with the zipper on his bag. "Tell me," I said. He looked around, avoiding eye contact. "I wasn't gonna come. Mom begged me not to. But it's getting bad, like, real bad." I crossed my arms. "You mean financially?" He shook his head. "No, physically." That stopped me cold. He finally looked up. "Dad collapsed last night. Ambulance had to come. Heart thing. They're keeping him at County General for now. They didn't want to tell you, but I figured you'd rather hear it from me." I sat down on the edge of my couch, the old one with the spring that always poked my hip. My brother didn't move. He just kept talking. "He's stable for now, but they said he's not out of the woods. And Mom, she's unraveling." She was crying in the hospital lobby, and not the performative crying, real crying. I stayed quiet, unsure what reaction I owed him. Sympathy, anger, indifference. He continued, "They're broke, Henry, like beyond broke. Cards frozen, mortgage overdue, utilities on final notice. Dad was driving Uber just to make ends meet and didn't tell anyone. That's why he had the chest pain. Didn't sleep. Ate junk all day. Stress piled up. I blinked slowly, trying to absorb all of it. Some part of me, an old rusted part, still wanted to feel bad, still wanted to fix something. But I didn't move. "Why are you really here?" I asked. He hesitated. "I think Dad wants to talk to you. Properly this time. Not about money. He asked about you when they brought him in." I tilted my head. "And what did you say?" "That I didn't know where you stood, that you had your reasons." We both sat in that awkward space where truth doesn't quite meet apology. Then he pulled out something from his bag, a sealed envelope. My name on the front, written in our dad's shaky handwriting. "He wrote this a week ago. Before the hospital thing, I guess he meant to send it." I hesitated before taking it. The paper was cheap, but the envelope was carefully folded, like someone had tried hard to make it look formal. I didn't open it yet. "I'm not asking you to forgive him," my brother said. I think you deserve to decide for yourself." That landed hard, because for years I hadn't decided anything. I'd reacted, adapted, endured. But now, maybe I could actually choose. He stood to leave. "I'll let you read it. No pressure. But he's at County Room 214. If you want to see him, do it soon." Then he left. The apartment went quiet again. For a moment, I just stared at the envelope, my thumb tracing the edge. I didn't know what scared me more, what it might say or what it might not. Eventually, I opened it. It wasn't long, barely a paragraph. "Henry, I know I've said a lot of things I can't take back. Maybe this doesn't mean much anymore, but I'm sorry. You didn't deserve how we treated you. None of it was fair. I see that now. I won't ask you to forgive me, but I hope you'll be okay. Dad. No manipulation, no guilt tripping, just a man admitting failure, and I didn't know how to feel. I sat there for a long time rereading that last line. I hope you'll be okay. Because for the first time it felt like someone in my family saw me not as a wallet, not as a fixer, but as a human being who'd been hurt. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, envelope clutched in my hand, cat curled at my feet like she was standing guard. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to visit him, not yet, but I would show up for myself. I got dressed, called in late to work, and drove to the hospital parking lot. Not to go inside, just to sit in the lot, to see the building where all this chaos had led. And as I sat there watching nurses come and go, patients wheeled in, families huddled with coffee cups and anxious eyes, I realized something. This was always going to end here. Not necessarily in a hospital, but in some moment where truth had no more places to hide. I pulled out my phone. No new messages, no missed calls. I turned off the engine, sat in silence. And then out of nowhere, a soft knock on my window. I turned. It was my mother. She stood there in a wrinkled coat, eyes, swollen mouth, trembling. No script, no performance. Just raw, exposed panic. She mouthed, "Please." And I felt my heartbeat slow to a crawl, because I wasn't ready. Not to yell, not to cry, but maybe, just maybe, to listen. My mother stood there not 10 inches from my window, her breath fogging the glass. It was the first time I'd seen her up close in months. Her makeup was smudged, her coat buttoned wrong. She looked human, smaller than I remembered. I didn't roll down the window, not right away. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever. Two people who used to live under the same roof, now separated by a pane of glass and 1,000 unspoken words. Finally, I cracked the window just a couple inches. She leaned in, voice hoarse. "Please, come see him." I said nothing. She glanced around the lot like she was afraid someone might be watching. "He asked for you again this morning. I think he wants to say goodbye." That word hit harder than I expected. Goodbye. "I'm not going up if this is some guilt trip," I said, voice low. "If he wants to manipulate me one last time, save it." Tears welled up instantly. "It's not, I swear. He's scared, Henry. So am I." I watched her for a moment longer, then unlocked the door and stepped out. She didn't try to hug me, thank God, just nodded and led the way. The elevator ride was silent. 3rd floor, room 14. Dad looked smaller too. The man who used to tower over me in his work boots, barking orders with grease-stained hands, now lay in a hospital bed, heart monitor pulsing beside him like a metronome for his final act. He turned when he heard the door, and I saw it, fear, regret, maybe even shame. "Henry," he whispered. I stayed near the door. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, voice raspy. "I wasn't sure either." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the chair beside him. Can I say a few things?" I hesitated, then sat. Not out of warmth, out of finality. "I messed up," he began. "I know that's not enough. Not for everything I said. Everything I let happen. I let your mom push you too far. I pushed you too far. I made you believe your worth was tied to what you gave us." I didn't interrupt. I told myself I was doing what a father should, protecting the family. But what I really did was protect our dysfunction. I protected our comfort, and I let you suffer for it. I felt the weight of it. The ugliness of being seen finally, but only at the edge of someone else's mortality. He coughed, then continued. "You have every right to walk away. Every right to cut ties. I don't deserve to ask for anything." Then he paused, eyes moist. "But if you ever decide to come back, not for us, but just to visit, I'll be here. Or I'll try to be." I let the silence stretch between us like a bridge suspended in fog. Then I said quietly, "Thanks for saying that. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something." I left before my mother could say more, before she could turn this moment into a photo op for her guilt redemption arc. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds thick like bruises. Rain was coming. I drove without thinking past my apartment, past the coffee shop where I first started rebuilding my life, and ended up at the city park where Dad used to take me when I was little. It was empty now except for an older man walking his dog and a teenage girl scrolling through her phone. I sat on a bench, and I breathed. For the first time in what felt like years, the air didn't feel thick with expectation. That night I opened my laptop and finished something I'd been working on quietly for months, a blog post titled "The Good Son Myth." It wasn't a takedown piece, it was a survival piece, about how we're taught that love means self-sacrifice, but nobody teaches us what to do when the people we love turn that sacrifice into obligation. How being the good one often means carrying everyone else's weight until we collapse. I hit publish. Within 2 hours, it was shared by a mental health advocacy page, then a trauma support forum. Then strangers started commenting. I thought I was the only one. My parents did this too. Thank you for putting it into words. Please keep writing. I didn't expect the wave, but I didn't resist it either. I started uploading short reflections, real stories, real pain, no sugarcoating. I gave people space to share their own. It grew faster than I could have imagined. Turns out the truth doesn't need a stage, just a crack. By the end of the week, I got an email from a podcast host asking if I'd come on and talk about the invisible pain of being the good kid. I said yes, not to expose my family, but to expose a pattern. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a victim. I started being something else, whole, unapologetically. But then, just when I thought the storm had finally passed, I got a message request on Facebook from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no posts, just a name. Emma R., my sister. She hadn't said a word to me in over a year. The message was just 3 words. We need to talk. Story 2. At dinner, my mom set her fork down, looked directly at my sister, and said, "It's for those who actually contribute." I had just taken my first bite of pasta. Silence. My sister smirked like she'd been waiting for that line all evening. My brother kept scrolling on his phone, but I could see the way his shoulders locked up. My dad casually wiped his mouth with his cloth napkin like someone had asked him to pass the salt. No one looked at me. That was the point. My sister finally said, "Just be happy we told you it all." And the thing is, I was. Not because I appreciated their honesty, but because after years of pretending they'd finally just said it out loud, I wasn't family. I was an asset, a sponsor, a walking ATM and a button-down. I looked up and said, "Thanks for the honesty." Then I finished my wine. And when I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop shut, down the payment portal, canceled every reservation, and revoked access to every linked account. They were supposed to be boarding a flight to Napa Valley in 12 hours. A trip I had planned, paid for, curated. They just didn't think I needed to be there. 2 years of savings, nearly $30,000. Flights, wine tours, vineyard stays, luxury spa packages, even a damn hot air balloon ride over the valley at sunrise. It had been my idea, a new beginning for the family. We hadn't traveled together in a decade. I thought maybe if I created something beautiful enough, expensive enough, intentional enough, they'd treat me like a real person again, or at least pretend to. But that dinner, the one at Il Mare, their favorite upscale faux authentic Italian spot with the imported olive oil they couldn't pronounce, that was the performance, the reveal. The whole evening had been staged. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. My mom kissed my cheek like she hadn't ignored my calls for 2 straight weeks. My sister barely looked up from her phone. My brother nodded at me like I was his accountant, not his sibling. And my dad, he gave me that tight, sanitized smile. The one he uses when he's about to drop something ugly but wants to ease into it like a corporate HR rep delivering a layoff in polite language. At first it felt almost normal. There was bread, there was wine. My mom complained about TSA, even though her flight wasn't until the next day. My brother cracked a dumb joke about his CrossFit trainer, and I actually laughed. For a second, it felt like family. Then the energy shifted. I should have known. My mom waited until the entrees arrived. Pasta, of course. Symbolic. Messy. Impossible to exit mid-bite without drama. She set down her fork like she was planting a flag and dropped the line like a stone into a still lake. It's for those who actually contribute. When I was 19, my mom opened a credit card in my name and maxed it out at a furniture store. When I was 24, my sister crashed my used Honda and laughed about it. When I got laid off during the pandemic, my dad told me I needed to man up and start delivering food like real men do now. And I still planned this trip because I thought, maybe this time they'd choose kindness. Maybe I was finally enough. But it wasn't about enough. It never was. It was about control. And now with everything booked and paid for, they didn't need to keep pretending. So I canceled it all. Flights gone, hotels refundable, spa package pulled. The system let me recoup about 80% of what I'd spent. I lost $6,000 just to not be humiliated in a winery gift shop. At 5:17 a.m., I got a text from my brother. "We can't board. Call the airline." I didn't reply. By 6:00 a.m., I had 5 missed calls from my mom, 2 from my dad, 3 from my sister. At 8:10, the phone rang again. I picked up. "You're out of the apartment," my dad said flatly. I want you out by next week. Click. The apartment. Technically theirs. They'd bought it years ago as an investment property and let me live in it for $1,000 a month, way below market. But it came with strings. No guests without notice. No changes to furniture. No adjusting the thermostat without permission. I paid rent on time every month. I shoveled their driveway when it snowed. I fixed their plumbing when the landlord was slow. I played the role, reliable son, gratitude machine, financial shock absorber. And now I was being evicted for canceling a trip I wasn't even invited to. Here's the thing, they never expected I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I started packing that morning, not in a panic, not with anger, but with this eerie calm I didn't know I had. Every drawer I emptied, every old shirt I folded into a box. I wasn't just moving, I was archiving, documenting the last days of a life I didn't want back. By noon, I had half the kitchen boxed. By 3 p.m., I'd found a listing for a furnished one-bedroom in a quiet corner of Seattle. The landlord was moving to Canada and needed someone to take over the lease immediately. He called me back within 10 minutes. We did a quick video tour. I Venmo'd the deposit. It was mine. 6 months, no co-signer, no dad approval, no questions about whether I really needed a second pillow. That night I slept better than I had in years. The next morning they showed up. I was kneeling on the floor taping up a box of mismatched plates when I heard the knock. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew. It was the kind of knock that wasn't asking, it was announcing. I opened the door, and there they were. My mom holding a plastic container of Danish pastries, like this was some kind of family brunch. My dad behind her hands shoved into the pockets of his khakis, eyes fixed on the porch railing. And from my mom's oversized purse, my sister's voice piped in through speakerphone like she was calling in from a war zone. Are we doing this or what? My sister snapped. I stepped aside, not to invite them in, but to make it clear they weren't getting past the threshold. My mom launched right in. We've been thinking maybe things got a little rushed. Maybe we were too hasty. My dad followed with that corporate voice he uses when he's trying to sound calm, but really wants to crush you. You're clearly not in a good place emotionally, but we're willing to forgive and move on if you stop being irrational. I felt something rise in my chest. Not rage, not even sadness. Laughter, the kind you choke on because it's either that or scream. I smiled. You think I'm irrational because I stopped funding your vacation? Because I didn't let you all humiliate me and still pick up the tab? From the phone speaker, my sister chimed in like an off-key Greek chorus. This is drama. That's what this is. You're blowing up years of family over one mistake. That word drama lit something cold in my stomach. So I told them the truth. Not just the truth about Napa, everything. The time I took out a personal loan to help cover Dad's back surgery when his insurance fell short. The time Mom guilt-tripped me into canceling a job interview because it overlapped with her birthday brunch. The 2 months I secretly covered my sister's rent because she couldn't talk about it, only to find out she'd gone to Coachella. The years I said yes and okay and sure, until I forgot what no even sounded like in my own voice. They stood there blinking like deer in stadium lights. My mom muttered something about how I was revising history. My dad said I should calm down before I burn all my bridges. Too late. I'm moving out in 2 days, I said. No, you don't need to worry about rent. No, I don't need your help. And no, I'm not coming to Sunday dinner ever again. And then I shut the door. No yelling, no final insults, just the quiet click of a lock sliding into place. 2 days later, I moved. The new apartment wasn't glamorous, just a modest one-bedroom with creaky floorboards and a slanted kitchen shelf that leaned like it had been through a divorce. But it was mine. Light came through the windows like it had somewhere to be. The neighbors smiled politely and then minded their own business. The silence was so loud it almost scared me. But in that silence I realized something. I could breathe. No one was hovering behind me asking why I needed a second pillow. No one was texting, "Can you cover this?" with zero context. No one was knocking at 11:00 p.m. to remind me to turn off the lights and respect the shared electric bill. For the first time in years, I felt like a person again, a whole person. I filled the place slowly, bought a secondhand couch off Facebook Marketplace, set up a desk in front of the window, splurged on a used espresso machine because I wanted to, because I could. Every single item felt like a reclaiming. Then a week and a half later, the emails started. First from Mom, subject, "Please call us, it's urgent," deleted. Then from Dad, "We need to talk, it's important, please don't ignore us," muted. I wasn't heartless, I still checked their social media, My sister's Instagram had gone quiet. My brother hadn't posted his usual gym selfies. Mom hadn't shared a single cat meme in days, an act of digital protest louder than any words. And then came the third email. From my brother. Just 5 words. Hey, something happened. Call me. I didn't. For hours I sat with it, letting it curdle in my chest, wondering if someone had died, wondering if I was cruel for not checking. And for a moment, just a flicker, I felt that familiar guilt rise up, the kind they'd carved into me over decades, the kind that said if you don't help, you're bad, you're wrong, you're ungrateful. But then that moment passed, because guilt without love is just manipulation. When I finally opened the email out of sheer curiosity, it was already outdated. It was Derek, my cousin, who told me what really happened. He texted me late that night, "Dude, they got wrecked. Airline didn't refund the taxes. Hotel charged a full cancellation fee. Your dad put part of the trip on a credit card he was already behind on. Now it's frozen." I blinked at the screen. Apparently no one had followed through on the travel insurance claim I'd paid for. No one had read the fine print. They lost almost $8,000 on a trip they never took. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No karma is a mirror high. Just a dull ache where family used to be. That's when the voicemail started. My dad stumbling over his words. My mom sniffling like a high school breakup. My sister claiming everyone's suffering. Then on a Tuesday morning, 5 missed calls from Mom. The final voicemail cracked something open in me. "If you don't help us now," she said, voice trembling, "you're not our son anymore." I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall. "You're not our son anymore." It was meant to break me, to twist the guilt knife, to force me back into the role. But it didn't. It just confirmed what I already knew, that I wasn't family, I was leverage. And just when I thought it couldn't get lower, couldn't possibly get more manipulative, someone rang my doorbell, again. And this time it wasn't my parents, it was my brother. And he wasn't alone. I opened the door, and there he was, my brother. Hoodie up, sunglasses on, backpack slung like a college kid heading to finals, except he wasn't here for school. No text, no warning, no, "Hey, is this a good time?" just appeared. For a moment I didn't move. He looked thinner, or maybe just worn down, but not enough to make me forget how casually he'd nodded at me during that dinner like I was a side dish at the table. Without asking, he stepped inside, walked past me, and sat on the edge of my couch like we were old friends catching up. "They need help," he said. No preamble, no apology. Just a statement like I was the bank manager, and this was a loan meeting. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I figured. He sighed, rubbed his temples like he was the one exhausted by all of this. "They're 2 months behind on the mortgage. Credit cards are frozen. Mom's hours at work got cut. And Kayla," he stopped, "my sister. She's under investigation at work. Something about misusing a corporate card. HR won't say much, but..." He shrugged like it was too complicated to explain, or maybe just too embarrassing. I didn't speak, just waited. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a manila envelope, laid it on my coffee table like it was evidence. Inside, printed bank statements, a drafted repayment contract, a formal request $10,000 to stabilize things. There were bullet points, estimated payback dates, a handwritten note from my dad about interest rates and restoring trust. It read like a business proposal. Not a single sorry, not a single "how are you doing?" I picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should. Or maybe that was just the weight of every time I'd been asked to fix what they'd broken. I sat down across from him and placed the envelope between us like it was radioactive. He started talking again fast like he was running out of time. "They were just stressed, okay? The stuff they said, they didn't mean it. I know Mom shouldn't have said you weren't her son. That was out of pocket. But you know how she gets. And Dad, he's scared." I took a sip of water, calm, still. Then I said no. He blinked like he didn't understand the word. No, I'm not helping. Not again. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw it confusion. Not because I'd said no, but because he genuinely didn't think I could. "You'd let the house go, let them sink like that." I stood up. "They made that decision when they decided I wasn't family. This isn't revenge. It's reality." He looked down, then back at me. "They're gonna lose everything." I nodded. Maybe they'll finally learn what it feels like to stand on their own. He stood too slower than before. "I'll tell them you said no." I walked to the door, opened it wide. Good. That night, my mom left me a voicemail. Her voice was small, almost childlike. "We shouldn't have said that. About you not being our son. We were angry, scared. You know we didn't mean it. I deleted it, not out of anger, but because I didn't need to hear it again. They hadn't meant it, maybe, but they believed it, and that was worse. 3 days later, something happened I never expected. I got an email from my credit monitoring service. Fraud alert. Someone had attempted to take out a payday loan in my name, $3,500 online application using my old address. It didn't go through, because I'd frozen my credit months earlier. But everything matched. Name, date of birth, social security number. Not a hacker, not some random identity thief. This was someone who had my information, someone I used to live with, someone who called me family. I requested a copy of the application, filed a report, added a fraud alert to all 3 credit bureaus, changed every password, and then I sat there in my apartment alone staring at the ceiling while my cat clawed the arm of the couch like a warning siren. I didn't confront them. What was the point? If they were willing to steal from me to save themselves, then whatever thread of humanity I was clinging to was already snapped. And still I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just got colder, clearer. They weren't my family. They were people I used to know. For a few weeks, nothing happened. No calls, no emails, no voicemails dripping with guilt or apology. Just quiet. I started to think maybe they were done. And then one afternoon, my cousin Lena sent me a screenshot. It was a Facebook post from my mom. Black and white background. Dramatic font. The kind of post that's practically wearing a victim badge. Some people pretend to be family until you need them. Some people pretend to love you until you're no longer useful. But that's okay. God sees everything. She had tagged half the family. Underneath a comment from Aunt Marie, "You don't deserve that." Some people forget who raised them. Others followed. "So sorry, hon. Sending love and prayers. God will handle it." I felt sick. And then the direct messages started. Aunts, uncles, even my grandmother. "What happened? You need to fix this. Family is all we've got." But it was Uncle Jeff who finally picked up the phone and called me. Not a voicemail, a real call. And when I answered, his first words were, "What the hell is going on?" Start from the top. Uncle Jeff said, his voice steady but low, like he already suspected the truth, and just needed to hear it confirmed. So I told him everything. Not just the Italy trip that never happened. Not just the dinner where they sat me down like I was a stranger applying for a family loan. I told him about the years of quiet betrayal. The loan I took out to help cover Dad's surgery when insurance bailed. The rent I paid for Kayla when her roommate vanished, though I later found out she went on a weekend trip to Coachella. The way Mom guilted me out of plans with friends because family comes first until I wasn't family anymore. I told him about the credit card in my name, the fake concern, the birthday dinner where I wasn't even asked how I was doing, just handed the check. The time Dad told me to man up when I got laid off during the pandemic, even though I was paying rent and helping them cover their utilities. Then the dinner, the final nail, where they let me sit there with false smiles until the moment Mom put down her fork and said, "It's for those who actually contribute." Uncle Jeff didn't interrupt, not once. When I was done, there was a pause. I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, "Jesus Christ, Henry." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "They didn't tell us any of that," he said. "They made it sound like you'd snapped, like you went off the rails." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so familiar. Rewriting history was their favorite family tradition. "They're good at that," I said. Later that day, my cousin Derek messaged me. "Dude," he wrote, "you broke the group chat." Turns out Jeff had called my mom after our talk. She tried to cry her way through it, spinning the same story how I'd been unstable, dramatic, selfish. But by then, word had already spread. The Facebook post didn't hold up, because now there was context, and context changes everything. One by one, the vague supportive comments disappeared. The post itself vanished the next morning. Then came the final message, from my mom. Not an apology, not even a question. Just, "I hope you're happy, you've turned everyone against us." I stared at the screen, then typed back, "You did that all by yourself. Sent, blocked." I expected it to go quiet again. And for a while it did. But 3 days later, my phone lit up with a flood of notifications. She was back. A new Facebook post, this one black and white, with dramatic font again, like a political campaign ad for guilt. "He's not mentally well. Please pray for my son. We're heartbroken but doing our best. Some things are beyond our control." No name, but the message was clear. And just to erase any doubt, she commented under her own post with a photo of me at age 12, grinning arms around her shoulders at a family picnic. The manipulation was so thick you could smell it through the screen. And it worked, at least for a few hours. Concerned relatives flooded my DMs. Aunt Janice, Cousin Noah, even Grandma Ruth. "What's going on, sweetie? They say you've been acting out. Did you lose your job? Are you using something?" The assumption was always the same. If the family was in chaos, it must be my fault. Then the message from Cheryl, an old coworker of my mom's. I barely remembered her, but she said she'd always liked me. "You were such a polite kid." She'd overheard Mom crying at work, telling people I was cutting myself off, that she feared for my safety, that they might need protection from me. She even mentioned something about a restraining order. That stopped me cold. Not because it was true I hadn't called, visited, or even texted. I'd done nothing. Nothing. But that was the genius of her plan. She wasn't accusing, she was planting seeds. Seeds of doubt. And in American culture, doubt spreads fast. We love redemption arcs, but we also love scandal. And nothing says scandal like the words mentally unstable. It wasn't about getting me back. It was about control. If they couldn't guilt me, they'd isolate me. Turn the family. Turn the narrative. Twist the truth so tight it strangled every chance I had to just live my life. But then something happened I never saw coming. Uncle Jeff posted. Public. Full name tagged. Bold font. No ambiguity. It's hard watching people rewrite history to protect themselves. Proud of my nephew for finally setting boundaries. Maybe if more of us had done that sooner, things would have been different. It hit like an earthquake. In less than 2 hours, it had more likes than any post in our family group since Kayla's graduation announcement. Messages started flooding in again, only this time they were different. "I'm sorry I judged you. I didn't know half of this. Your parents always kind of scared me, to be honest." One cousin, Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in years, told me she finally had the courage to move out of her mom's place because of what I shared with Jeff. She said I thought I was just the family punching bag, but turns out I wasn't the only one bleeding. And then came the final blow. An email from Dad. No subject, no greeting, just one line. "You've embarrassed this family enough. We're blocking you." That was it. No peace offering, no last-ditch plea, just one last weak grasp at control. I stared at it for a moment, then closed the laptop and smiled. Because this time the silence that followed, it wasn't empty, it was earned. But the story wasn't over yet. Because a week later, I got a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside, a copy of a legal form, an actual restraining order filing, incomplete, unsigned. But the message was clear. They were still trying to own the narrative, still trying to erase me. And I knew then, the next move would be mine.